Hey there. So today I'm speaking with Jennifer Spor, who is a spiritual advisor, a channel, an Akashic record master, consultant, and teacher. So I had it all written down so I wouldn't forget the order of the words. Um, so yeah, and all these things sounded interesting to me, so that's why you're here. So thanks for coming, and I look forward to whatever we talk about.
Yeah, sounds great.
So, you said in your former life, blah, blah, so what was you haven't been doing this all along. So what led you to taking this path of the spiritual, role, a healer, guide, whatever, like where did that pivot happen in your life?
Yeah. First, I just want to say thank you for
Oh,
having
sure.
me on your show and for the warm welcome. I'm super grateful and excited to be here to have this conversation. And that's a big question, and I'm going to do my best to condense it down into the Cliff Notes version.
I know, because I
But
always
to
like,
say,
it's always so interesting to me to like to talk to people and be like, you didn't just start out like you went to college for this. Like that doesn't happen. So it's like, how did this come in your life? And
yeah,
you know.
totally. Um, Yeah, I mean, my entire life has been unconventional. That could be a whole other podcast episode. Basically, to say that, to answer your question, to say that, like so many other people, I basically just hit a wall in my life many years ago. At this point, it's been several years where I had a successful career. I checked all the boxes off the list of what traditional society conditions us to believe that it means to achieve success.
Right.
And so I have always been someone who has had strong conviction in whether it's a job or whatever it is, it has to be something that I believe in. Right. And so what happened was I ran out of promotions and felt like I ran out of things to learn, and I didn't feel like I was making a difference anymore. So I was an executive in a big retail company overseeing store operations
Mm-hmm.
at that point. And but I didn't take action right away, even though I wasn't feeling happy anymore in my work, because again, for a lot of reasons that I know your listeners can relate to, it's just like I had a lot of fears because I did take the unconventional path to achieving that level of success. I didn't go to college, and like a lot of other people did at that point, or other people in my generation. So I had a lot of fear around, oh, if I leave my career, am I gonna make the same amount of money, or like how will I get by, and all the things, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I didn't take action right away. What I did start doing at that point was, outside of my work, really sharpening and bringing forward more of my spiritual gifts. I've just naturally always been very empathic and sensitive. And so I really started nurturing that right away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then about another year or a year and a half went by. And then the catalyst for actually making the change was that at that time, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I was living in New Jersey
Mm-hmm.
in my other career in life. And I was trying to fly back and forth a lot to be with my family in Idaho and help out, just and be with my mom as much as I could.
Right.
I had a job at that point where I was on all the time. And so there was a defining moment that I remember so clearly, as if it were still, yesterday, where I was in Idaho. I was next to my mom's bedside, and it was literally only a few days before she had transitioned.
Mm-hmm.
And my phone started blowing up, calls and messages and things going on with an issue that was happening in my work at that point.
Right.
And I remember looking at my phone, a BlackBerry at the time, for those
Right.
who know what BlackBerries are. I actually
Right.
miss those, but anyway, looking at my phone, and my phone blowing up, and then looking over at my mom in her bed, and that was it. Like, I decided I was done. I said to myself, I have no idea what the next step is beyond this moment,
Mm-hmm.
My courage exceeded my fear.
Right.
I had no idea what was ahead, but I made a vow to myself in that moment that I wasn't going to allow myself to give my power away,
Yeah.
to be stuck in my life. And that even though I didn't know the path ahead, I knew that I needed to make a change. So a lot like, the lyrics of a country song, I ended up, because at the time remote work culture wasn't a thing.
Right.
So I ended up being given an ultimatum, essentially, that if I wanted to be closer to my family physically, that I needed to step down from my role. So I stepped down in
Yeah.
my career and packed up my car, rented my house out, packed up my car, and drove across the country in 4 days. And I didn't start my business at that time, though. It was all very synchronistic, and I was still working for my old company, just doing consulting stuff
Right.
toward the end. And I was out in Idaho, and what was happening, this was like a tremendous time of awakening for me, of spiritual awakening. And so what was happening at the time is that, I had worked with coaches and healers and therapists and had psychic readings and all this stuff. But I was hard pressed to find anyone who could actually relate to what I was experiencing and help me to integrate who I was becoming into my physical reality.
Right.
So that was what inspired me to start my business and to do the work that I do, because I work with a lot of people who are either in corporate leadership or people who are already spiritual entrepreneurs or are following that path, but they're feeling called to pivot, or their soul is bringing forward the next change, right? Or the next level of expansion in their life. And so that's really what I support other people in doing, is helping them to integrate and to move through the changes they're experiencing with more ease and grace.
What yeah, because it's like it's filling this gap that you aren't being served. So where were you searching for anything specific? Because like the Akashic records is one whole major thing. Like, was that something you knew about at that time yet?
No, that's a
Okay.
great question. That's a fantastic question. So a lot of people ask, and like just now I shared my origin story, right? But it's
Right.
like there isn't any one defining moment or
Mhm.
any one awakening on our journey, right? I've found over time that our journey is a constant evolution,
Mhm.
and our ascension and our consciousness, and as our frequency rises, that is an evolution.
Right.
And so the Akashic records came later. The Akashic
Okay.
records came about 3-ish years ago. I had studied all kinds of other healing modalities, universal laws. um, I was a light body practitioner. I'd also studied Reiki. I also
Mhm.
practiced Reiki. And I just started feeling that call. And the Akashic records aren't, I don't even really like to refer to them as a modality per se, because they're an aspect of our being. Each and every one of us has our own Akashic records.
And
And then there's
actually,
the,
we
huh?
know what we're talking about, but just in case people are like, what the heck is Akashic records? Like, do you want to break that down?
Yeah, sure. So very simply, the Akashic records are the library for your soul. The Akashic records exist for each individual person. And then there's the Akasha, which is the overall field of consciousness. Okay, so the
I love
Akashic,
it so much because it's like it's so powerful and so major, and it's just like so simply stated. It's just the library of consciousness.
the most simple and
I
profound
know.
things, they are that,
I
right?
know.
So every one of us has our own Akashic records, and they are the library for your soul. They house all of your soul's experiences through all of your lifetimes, all of your beliefs, emotions, anything and everything that you've lived or experienced. It resides in your Akashic records. And the Akashic records are something that you're typically called to, or that you feel drawn to, or feel
Mhm.
curious about. And if you feel that, then that is a sign
Right.
that, to follow that, right? Um, I love working in the Akashic records with clients because it's like taking a big universal shortcut, because you're working with someone tuning directly into their soul records.
Right.
And I've had countless people share how, their life has changed in like even one session. Like I had a client one day that said, I think my life just changed in the last 25 minutes, and her session was for an hour. I'm like, well, we don't have to like use the session just to use it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But that's how quickly
Right.
things can shift for you when you're ready, right?
Mhm.
To make a shift. It can be a matter of just accessing your records at a deeper level.
Well, like different, I always thought Akashic Records was just like a past life thing, but then I scheduled an Akashic record reading with somebody really not understanding what I was asking for. And
Mhm.
they tell me about like the different like star seed origins and things like that too. So do you delve into that? Like,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's another great question. Absolutely. And so everyone has their unique way of working in the records with people. And my gift, even before I began studying the records, I can immediately tap into someone's field and see and feel and know what their
Mhm.
highest aligned path is here. Like,
Cool.
what are the big pieces, right, that their soul is contracted
Hmm.
to live or to complete while they're here.
Right.
So if that, sometimes that involves starseed origins.
Hmm.
I do work with people in helping them to reconnect with their stellar origins.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it is more about someone could be an earth keeper, right? It's
Hmm.
really,
Yeah.
really unique to their experience. And some people have all of that in
Yeah.
their records.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just wanted to like, address that aspect
No,
of it too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And that's also what inspired me to start teaching the records as well, because I it's part of my mission, and it lights me up to empower others to
Hmm.
live embodied from their own inner knowing,
Yeah.
right? And imagine what our world could be like if everybody was tapped in to
Hmm.
their Akashic records and confidently, living from that soul-led place.
It would be interesting to hear my husband's, but I would imagine you would need permission, to like tap into people. Like you're not supposed to, like, that's just like, an ethical
That's
thing.
true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But I'd be
It's
so curious
absolutely
to,
true.
he might be like, sure, whatever, because he doesn't think it's real. But I'd be like, just tell me, sign here. Say
Well,
yes.
that's actually great too, because I'm glad that you brought that up, because what also happens is that a client, or if someone's receiving information from their records, they're only going to receive as much information as they're willing to allow themselves to receive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if someone's skeptical or whatever, they're not going to
They won't get
have.
the centaur life or whatever.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, they won't. But to answer your question about your husband, right? If there is a question that you're asking that
Mhm.
has to do with your relationship with your husband, then I can answer that
Right.
question,
That's like
right?
a little loophole. Yeah.
It's because it's a situation that
Affects
involves you.
me.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. It's so fun. I know I haven't dove into that like with an Akashic record reading. I've had like friends who, or friends, teachers, healers that are close to me that have been like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you know about this past life of his and I know about it too." So I get that information as it pertains to us, but I never got a reading for him, without his permission, because it's like that's his prerogative. It's not my business. But yeah, it's just interesting. So you got into the Akashic records later on. What was your childhood experiences like? Were you like a sensitive kid that was shut down, or was supported, or what's the story there? Or is there a story there?
Oh yeah. I had a rough time when I was a kid. I ended up being out on my own at 16.
Okay.
I was always really sensitive. It's so interesting because I remember, like, this memory stands out when I was 6 years old back in the day. Like, I used to walk to school by myself because the elementary school was literally like a block or two
Right.
from my house. And there was this empty barn that I would walk by every day, and it just gave me the
Spooked you.
creeps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would I have a lot of memories like that. And but my gifts were shut down for a long time because I was literally told not to speak unless spoken to when
Mm-hmm.
I was a kid.
Right.
So I pretty much did my best to stay under the radar. I also experienced a lot of abuse and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I really just lived a lot in survival mode and did my best to just not draw attention to myself
Right.
in any way. And then some situations at home ended up escalating when I was a little bit older, and I ended up making the decision to leave one day when I was 16, and I
Mhm.
never went back.
Right. Right.
Um I've written about that moment because that was probably the first time in my life that I really was faced with, okay, fate or destiny. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, fate, here's the life that you're born into, but you have the free will choice
Right.
to decide which path you're going to go down. I could have easily went down a much darker path if I continued to allow myself to be a victim, which sounds funny because I was a child,
Right. Right.
and but I didn't. I chose to leave, and
Yeah.
that was that. And that instilled a lot of deeply rooted survival
Mm-hmm.
patterns in me, trauma responses that took a long time for me to work through. And it served me. I
Right.
mean, a lot of our
Of
experiences,
course. Yeah.
all of them have a purpose. It served me for a long time. And it's also part of why I was so successful in my prior career
Right.
without having gone to college or done any of the other traditional paths that many people do, because I was just that driven.
Right. Right. We've talked about that, me and my husband, with our kids, like how age 16 is like really pivotal. Like 16 is when I discovered massage and like energy and all of the metaphysical things. And 16 is when he like, ended up moving from his mom's house to his dad's house and like that life path. And then our oldest figured out she was trans right around the time she was 16. She dropped out of school and went to college early. And like, so we're like 16's like the decisions you make 16 are like your trajectory for your life. It's like so interesting to like, you know, just the gravity of that age. We don't realize it when
Yeah.
you don't know that it's like setting the foundation for your future. Like his mom got pregnant and had him when he was 16, my husband. So we were basing that when our oldest decided to leave high school. We're like, well, Grammy, made a big life decision. And my husband said, once you make adult decisions, then you're an adult. So like,
Yeah.
so that was like Grammy and Grace. And it's just kind of interesting. So I just like the age 16 struck out on that, in your story, because it really is like that's kind of like our foundation as an adult. It's just like the choices we make really set the path for the future.
Yeah.
um but and then do you think that you were aware of your intuition kind of poking at you throughout your adulthood before you had like that wake up call?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've always been highly empathic. I mean, there's so many stories and instances. I mean, I'm not trying to tune into someone's auric field, okay? It's just I'm that sensitive when I'm around someone or even connecting with someone virtually. I
Mm-hmm.
just feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And and I have a lot of I experience a lot of claircognizance. So I
Right.
just know things too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I used to experience that constantly in my old career. And I would always be right. Like I would see someone or have a conversation with someone and they would say something, and I'd be like, well, I don't know. I'd be thinking this to myself. And then
Right.
sure enough, the situation would unfold exactly as I felt that it was going to, or what I was feeling from a person would turn out to be true.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I experience that all the time.
That's cool. So do you, what's your, like, how do you spend most of your week? Do you do one-on-one sessions like most of the time, or do you teach like once every quarter? Like, how does it work for your business aspect of like
Yeah,
sharing
so
with
I
others?
still, yep, so I still work with clients one-on-one.
Hmm.
I still offer, one-off Akashic Records readings here and there. I have a virtual retreat that I hold quarterly called Ascension in the Akasha,
Hmm.
which is where I teach other women how to access their Akashic records. And it's it is really more of a very kind of healing retreat sort of
Hmm.
environment, because I'm not only teaching people how to access their records, but I'm also teaching them other healing technologies and techniques to use in their records to help them create greater results for
Hmm.
themselves. So I
Hmm.
have those quarterly. I have one coming up in January, and yeah, I'm about to launch a group mentorship as well
Oh, nice.
called, yeah, Path of the Priestess. You're actually the very first person to hear about it.
Oh, very
So,
cool. Well, it
yeah,
must be that priestess energy that I carry,
it's brand new. I mean, you're the
Yeah.
first one to hear about it.
Well, that's exciting.
I'm literally setting everything up for it right now.
Very good. And then the mentorship, is that like weekly calls or month, whatever, like you're supporting people who are taking this journey?
Yes. So it's very specific. I channel a lot of information and work
Mhm.
with a lot of different guides.
Right.
The Path of the Priestess experience is influenced um by Mary Magdalene, Melchizedek,
Hmm.
Merlin, Isis, Osiris. I mean, there's several guides that are supporting me in bringing these teachings forward.
Nice.
But it's a very deep mentorship, so it's only for 8 women.
Right.
And it's actually a hybrid online in-person experience. So we're going to be meeting together on Zoom, where I facilitate the lessons every twice a month.
Hmm.
But as part of the lessons at the end, we're also coming together as a collective circle to do grid work together.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's part of it. And then we're ending on summer solstice 2024
Hmm.
here in Coeur d'Alene, actually, because Lake Coeur d'Alene in of itself is like this. It's this enormous 25-mile long, 1 to 3 mile wide lake that is this huge galactic portal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the energies here are very magical and very strong. It was funny because it was mostly Mary Magdalene that I was speaking with about these teachings, and it's like, oh, well, where do we want to do the
Yeah.
in-person retreat to bring the journey to a close and to celebrate? And it's like, Coeur d'Alene, are you sure? Because I already live here. I was kind
It
of
might
like,
be the
I want to go
destination.
somewhere else. Yeah, I want to go somewhere else. And she was like, nope, nope, it needs to be there. So that's where it's gonna be. I'm super excited about it. This is It's really about working with other women to help them to fully bring forward online all of their gifts and
Hmm.
to create their own lineage and their legacy work.
Right.
That's really what it's about. And a lot of the teachings are centered around true alchemy, divine creatorship, teaching that, and ascension
Yeah.
and connection with their gifts.
And I figured, like, I was thinking, oh, well, let me ask you about ascension, because I've been talking about it to like people that are friends of mine, but they're not in it like I'm in it, like in, like, like the way me and you can talk about this stuff. And I'm like, you guys know what ascension symptoms are, right? And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, so do you want to talk about ascension at all? Like, just to give people like an idea of like,
Yeah, I mean, ascension is it's a big topic,
I
and
know, if
we
you
could talk about it for
summarize.
days and hours. Essentially, to say that, to try my best to simplify it, to say that we are a soul having a human experience. Our
Mhm.
souls are eternal, thus the Akashic records.
Right.
And we're here to evolve. We're here to learn. We're here to live in the embodiment of love and truth for the evolution of our personal journey, but also in service to others, in service to the collective. And so, with each evolution of our journey, our consciousness and our frequency continues to rise
Hmm.
higher and higher, more and more into the embodiment of love and truth. And
Hmm.
that's really what ascension is. It's evolution.
Right.
And part of that evolution and growing on our journey is about balance. It's about balance and harmonization. That is what contributes to the ascension journey.
Hmm.
We have, when I talk about balance and harmonization, one topic I'm feeling guided to bring forward is body mastery. And I'm not just talking about the physical body, but we have multiple bodies, ethereally, spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So essentially, bringing ourselves into alignment in every aspect of our being.
Yeah.
One body, aside from the physical body, right, is challenging, but also emotional mastery is something that a lot of people are challenged with, because when we're holding on to disease or trauma, or anything that's unhealed, any wounding, right,
Hmm.
our emotions can get the best of us. And so really, it's not about reaching a space on your path where you don't care. You care very much. It's really more about compassionate detachment. It's being able to step into an observer role
Hmm.
with yourself
Right.
and to have the awareness to inquire, right? Oh, to be curious,
Hmm.
oh, I'm having this experience. Why is this occurring?
Right.
And really feeling into where it's coming from. And so part of ascension as well is being tapped into your soul's voice, being able to discern easily the difference between your ego mind and your soul's guidance, and how our soul's guidance comes forward is unique for each person.
Well, I know people are, struggling with the ascension symptoms because it's like your body's like trying to calibrate with those higher frequencies and those higher energies. So people
Yes,
get like ears ring, they get headaches, fatigue, and like all of these things can be heightened and influenced by like the solar activity and like earth activity too. So,
absolutely. We're
yeah.
connected with everything.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the entire cosmos
Hmm.
resides within us, beyond our cells, in our beyond our atoms, even in our electrons, are multidimensional gateways. I mean, literally, we have multidimensional gateways within our bodies, and the ascension symptoms. The reason why people experience those is because our physical body is often the last
Yeah.
to catch up,
Right.
essentially. And also, again, bringing us back to the topic of balance, right? Again,
Mm-hmm.
if we are more focused in the upper chakras,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not grounded, and
Right.
we're not balancing out, our
Hmm.
how we're raising our frequency, that's when that disease,
Hmm.
happens.
Right. I know it's equally important. It's like not one chakra is better than the other. They all have to be open and aligned.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And the
exactly,
more grounded you are, the more you can reach high, kind of a thing.
exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I appreciate everything you've been sharing with us. Is there anything like more you want to like dive into or another thing that's kind of poking at you?
Really just feeling guided to share that, there's a lot going on in the world. There's
Yeah.
a lot to care about in the world, right? And especially as someone who's sensitive, it can also be very distracting, and everyone is inherently good, and people want to make a difference in the world. And so in the times that we're living in, really being clear in your sense of self and what your role is, right? It's like, what are you so passionate about that you would fall on the sword for?
Yeah.
What lights you up? That is the way that you can create a ripple effect and make the biggest difference in not only your own ascension journey, but in raising planetary consciousness.
Yeah. My dog just walked in. She's usually my indicator of like energies being different. I'm like, okay, what's going on? The dog's acting funny. If people were to call you and get a session, how does it look like for just a regular reading, not like the teaching aspect?
Yeah, so actually the easiest place to go for a reading is to just go to my website, jenniferspor.com. It's JENNIFERSPOR.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just go to the work with me
Mm-hmm.
tab, there's a place to book in an Akashic Records reading. And those are typically an hour.
Okay.
And really in a single reading, most of the time when I do those, it's because somebody has a specific topic, that they want to focus on to either receive healing around or to receive, clarity around, and that's why they end up booking them.
Right. Well, I know because like I said, I had them and I was hoping I didn't understand. Like, I didn't know I couldn't just like put in a request, like, oh, tell me about this lifetime with me and my husband, like, or this person didn't operate that way. She's like, oh, that's a different type of reading. I'm just gonna tell you about this. And I was kind of like, oh. So like,
So I can say that, I mentioned this earlier, that I have an innate gift for being
right.
able to immediately tap in on what
Yeah.
someone's highest aligned path is. They're feeling blocked. I know exactly where it is. We
Mm-hmm.
can do the energetic work and otherwise to clear the field around that so that they can move forward in a much more
Mm-hmm.
kind of exponential sort of way, right?
Yeah.
But I can answer any question in the records, and it's because I'm not answering the question. I
Right.
am the channel. I'm
Yeah.
channeling the information. So it's not me
Yeah.
that is giving you the reading. I'm serving as the conduit for
Right.
that.
Right.
And the more willing and open-minded someone is to receive information, then the
Mm-hmm.
more information
Mm-hmm.
is going to come through.
And you had training for
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my journey with the records, I felt the call. They literally just like popped in, and I started exploring the records on my own. And then I did train. I joined a mastery program where I trained for a year in
Okay.
the Akashic records. And then beyond that, as a master consultant, stepped into teaching.
Okay. Because like I know that like it can look like a library and it's almost like you're pulling out a book or so I've heard. Um, but like sometimes I'll just have things pop in my head when I'm working on people. Like last night I was like to this girl, I'm like, you have like a mermaid connection. I'm like, I don't even know if you know about this. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, have you heard of Lemuria? I'm like, because then I saw dolphins too. I was like, I'm like, I don't even know if you can, take it or leave it, but that's just what I got, So
Yeah, that will happen a lot too. That information will come through that doesn't have to do with what the person wants to focus on. And when that comes about, I will ask their permission if
mhm.
I can share that, because I want the client to be able to receive what they want to receive from the session together. But most
Right.
of the time, people are curious and they're like, yeah, go ahead and share. Because I could literally channel information for an entire hour
Right.
without someone asking a question, because
Right.
my channel is
You're just
literally
seeing
like
it.
turning
Yeah.
on a water faucet.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as I open someone's records,
It
it'll
just
just start
floodgates.
coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
Pretty
good
cool.
to for someone to have an idea of really what's most on their heart when they
Yeah.
have one of those sessions, to receive the most
Specifics.
benefit from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. That's awesome. And I guess I'll have to contact you since you can you can do a la carte.
We would have fun. It would be great. Yeah.
I'm sure it would be. It's like I'm aware of some things, but there's so much. You never know. Like there's like layers of the onion. There's so many layers to everything. So I'd be curious to hear what else you got, but but that we'll do that another time. So
Yeah, absolutely. And for those feeling called, like I said before, everyone has their own records and
mhm,
they're absolutely accessible. Um, you just need a little bit of training and support and nurturing to establish a deeper connection to them, but
mhm.
everyone has them and everybody can do it.
That's really awesome. And I'm happy to introduce this to people. Whoever's listening, then they were like, what the heck? Like their mind just was blown. But I think I wonder. I honestly don't know. Like maybe half of the listeners already know this and the other half don't. I have no idea, but I'm happy to share it and talk about it because it's just such a cool topic. And
I
and
mean, we have so much potential. We are so limitless. Like I said, we literally have the cosmos within us. I mean,
mhm,
these multidimensional gateways, we are barely even scratching the surface on a
mhm.
day-to-day basis in terms of the sheer divine power that we have as creator beings.
I know. And it is mind-boggling and like the whole like hopping timelines or like parallel lives and all of that. So I guess parallel lives can come up with your work too,
Oh yeah, I
I
mean,
would
well,
think.
that's because time, past, present, future
Yeah, it's all now.
is an earth plane thing. It's like
Right.
a linear human type of thing. Beyond the earth plane, there is just now. So yes, you can
Hmm.
step into different timelines, access past lives. We say past, present, future to put that into human speak, right?
Right.
But you can, yes, step into different dimensions and
Right.
connect with different versions of yourself.
I know I've gotten glimpses of my own. So it's like it can be so wild. So it's just like,
It's
when
fascinating.
I know when people are first like interested in like tapping into like energy work, you're like, you have no idea like how far you're gonna like, how far your mind will be blown. At first you're like, oh my God, energy's real. Oh, crystals have energy and chakras, and you're like, that's
Yeah,
nuts.
crystals are living.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I was told by a friend that like she saw me as an oak tree, like, back in another time. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. That feels right to me. So
That's so beautiful. It's so funny too that you bring up an oak tree because I use the oak tree as a reference a lot when we're talking about like navigating our path, right? It's like stay grounded like an
mhm,
oak tree. Like you're firmly, your branches are flexible, but you're
mhm.
firmly rooted.
I know. And I was just reading something yesterday, which reminded me, I think I read it once before, but they were saying that the word druid comes from the word oak in like Celtic, which is spelt very similar to druid, like the druids had a connection to the oaks. I'm like, there you go again. Like me and the oak
Yes.
tree, we go way back.
I have it's I'm just like it's blowing my mind the synchronicities right now because I have druid ancestry too.
Oh, nice.
And
Oh my
that is
God.
not uh a
That's
group of
literal
people that
bloodline.
comes up very often.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I know. I just read I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast recently or not, but I read Dolores Cannon's most like she had this book published after she passed. It's called Horns of the Goddess, and they interview druids, and like everything the druids say just resonates so deeply with me. Like I'm like, yes, like that's like my soul sisterhood for sure. Like that feels very
Yeah,
familiar.
I'm sure you have ancestry with them for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I got that Northern Europe, Irish, whatever
Yep,
mixture.
if you're feeling drawn, there's a reason why. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. It's like trust those resonances that we get, like that's a peek in. So I guess if people had little whispers of hints, they could come to you and say, here's this, help me, and then you could
Yeah,
pinpoint it all.
absolutely. Yeah. It's usually only ever our mind, right, that stops us from pursuing what we're
Hmm.
feeling drawn to because it's unknown, right? Our soul's guidance is always directing us to expansion. This is a whole other podcast episode too, but there's so much inversion in our society around what words even mean,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
so
we
much.
are literally wired for expansion. We're creator beings. That's the core essence of what we are and who we are. Yet we live in a society that conditions us to believe that change is something to be feared,
Mm.
that conditions us to believe that surrender means defeat.
Right.
And it's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just the language aspect, like, in my researching of the divine feminine, like hag and whore and crone and witch and, all of those words that we think are bad, they're actually not, so there's so much,
Yeah,
so much has been twisted around. So that's always part of, like, a submission of mine is to make to bring truth to light of all this stuff that we've
absolutely.
been, has been like squashed and demonized for centuries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm excited for when I call you for a reading, because that'll be interesting to see what you get.
I'm loving our connection so much.
I know. I'll have to book it after we hang up. But yeah, thanks. I'm
I,
glad we were connected. Oh, what were we gonna
we
say?
could talk for a week.
I know. I'm like, I know you had to go. Like I have, I don't have to go yet, but it's like I'm respectful of your time. So I'm happy to continue talking for, like you said, like for another
Oh
couple.
yeah, no, I can do another 7 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. He's like, we don't have that much time. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna try and force anything, but if there's anything more you wanted to say, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to include this as well. We were just talking about all of the inversion that exists in our society and how we're literally creator beings. That's the essence of who we are. Um, it can be really noisy out there, navigating our path through all of the limiting beliefs, all of the negativity. And so, knowing in your core of your being what truth feels like for you
Hmm.
is the the key to confidently and unapologetically navigating your path, regardless of anything else you learn or pursue or do or who you are, knowing what that truth feels like for you.
That's key. And I teach my clients that all the time, like just like the very simple method of the body pendulum and what is yes and what is no in your body, and listening to that and acting on
Yeah.
that instead of
Yes.
dismissing it, running it through logic, intellectualizing it. It's like if it feels wrong, listen. If it feels right, listen.
Absolutely. And a lot of people also think, because we, again, many of us are conditioned to live in a this or that mindset,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it's really this and that. Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can have and be and do and create whatever we want. My whole point being, which I could have gone off on a tangent there, just to say, when it comes to feeling that truth in your body, then there's acting on it, right?
Hmm.
And you don't have to be without fear to choose to move forward. You only have to be aware,
Right.
right? I mean, being fearless doesn't mean being without fear. It means your ability to make a conscious decision, an empowered decision to continue to move through it. So do it all scared.
Yeah. Yeah. They say like, yeah, like courage is like having fear, but doing it anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's where all the biggest growth is anyway. So
Don't wait. Do it all scared.
I know, you just close your eyes and jump. Like, it's all right.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to talk to you and spend this time. So, yeah. What do you do? Are you active on social media? Do you have a social media accounts that people could follow you if they wanted to, or are they better off
Yeah,
just going
I'm
to the
mainly
website?
active on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have my own podcast, Path of the Awakened Heart.
Okay. When did you start your podcast?
So I just launched my podcast this year. I actually had another podcast before that for
Okay.
like 3 years and just felt like it was time to go deeper.
Okay.
And so I launched Path of the Awakened Heart earlier this year.
Mm-hmm. And do you talk to different people, or you share stories that you experienced, or both?
Both. So I
Yeah.
have guests and I go solo sometimes too.
Yeah. I know. I have so many topics. Like I did 100 episodes, and um I'm like, after a while I was like, I don't need to do this every week. Like it's getting to be too stressful and like too much. So I was just like, I'll just do it when I can. So, having
Yeah.
a guest will prompt an episode. And then like if I can collect myself enough to organize and write out, some bullet points, and I can do a recording. But I've been slacking on that because I was so busy this fall, but I love sharing my story because like our experiences are so cool, and to normalize them and to share them with others really kind of gains momentum and like helps others feel like secure about tapping into these things. And just it's
Absolutely.
a way to kind of share it with the, I don't
We're
know.
meant to be connected with each other. We're not meant to
Hmm.
do this journey alone.
Yeah, I know. It's nice to know you're not alone and to just normalize these things. So I'm happy that
Absolutely.
whoever, whoever connected you to me did. So I'm grateful for it. Like I had to like remind myself today. I'm like, I have to check the email. Like, what are we even talking about? This is what happens a lot of the time because I get rushed and then I'm like, oh, I don't even know what I'm doing. I just know I have to talk to
Oh no,
somebody.
I like to do things this way too,
Yeah.
unscripted. So
No, I don't script anything. I don't even the things I have like an idea what I'm going to talk about. I never really know.
yeah,
I know people who write out a whole episode and read it. I don't do that. I just off the cuff. So
yeah.
take it or leave
Well,
it.
it's real life, right?
Yeah, yeah, I know. With dogs barking and cats running around, whatever. So, and it's Mercury retrograde is kicking my butt this time. Like, it depends on your own chart and where things are. But this apparently this Mercury retrograde, and we're not even there yet. It's like starts in a few days.
Like the 13th, 14th, right around
I
there.
think, yeah, I think it starts the
Wow.
18th, but like whatever, like we're in the shadow, and like
Yeah.
I've had so many things already. Like that's why my tree is bare behind me because it's missing lights, and I don't have my star died. So I'm waiting for a new star to come in the mail and more lights to come in the mail. It's been a doozy already. So it's one of those Mercuries for me, but just going with it.
Yep. Best just to roll with it.
Yeah, no, not a whole lot else that you can do. So
Yep.
but well, thank you so much for joining me. And I guess we'll sign off now. But I'll be sure to be in touch with you. And I look forward
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
whatever you find in my field. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to connect, and I mean truly an honor to connect with you and to have this conversation. So thank you. Thank you
oh
so
yeah.
much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you too.